only in January 2007. Then Apple CEO Steve Jobs stood on stage in San Francisco to unveil a tiny rectangle that changed the way the world communicates. Over the last decade, Apple has gone on to sell more than 1.2 billion iPhones. Here's a quick look at how the iPhone has changed over the past 10 years. This is the one that started it all. It was, as Jobs said at the time, it was an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator like no device before it. But the original iPhone wasn't without its flaws. It didn't have 3G data, or GPS, both of which were introduced a year later with the iPhone 3G. The second iPhone also replaced the aluminum and plastic back for a solid piece of curved plastic. A year after that, Apple introduced a life cycle that its phone launches have followed since, unveiling the iPhone 3GS, with the S standing for speed. The device included minor hardware and software refinements over the 3G. Its release also kick-started the two theories about the upgrade cycle: those who upgrade when Apple revamps its phones, and those who wait for the S model and all the kinks to be worked out. iPhone 4, arguably Apple's back device, was prone to shattering on dropping, and would drop calls if you held it a certain way, but it had the sharpest screen on the market at the time, the first front-facing camera on an iPhone, and the first to be available on US networks other than just AT&T. iPhone 4S. Again, but the iPhone 4S was the first to feature Apple's voice assistant Siri, and a camera that could record 1080p HD video. iPhone 5. In response to thick screens, Apple decided to try something different with the iPhone 5. It didn't increase the width of the phone over the 4S, but made it about a quarter-inch taller, allowing for another row of apps to be displayed on the home screen. It was the first of many iPhones that were very difficult to use one-handed, as most people's thumbs could not easily reach the top of the screen. It was also the first iPhone to support LTE, and the first to use Apple's Lightning charging port, instead of the wide 30-pin connector that had been used on the iPhone to date and iPod before it. iPhone 5S, the main introduction of the Touch ID fingerprint scanner. At the time, the feature was used to authenticate downloads on the App Store, but the technology has been used in subsequent iPhones for Apple's contactless payment system, Apple Pay. This was also the first iPhone that came in gold. iPhone 5C, positioned S. The 5C is the only iPhone since the iPhone 3GS to feature a plastic back, and the only one to come in jaunty colors. It started at $449, roughly $200 less than the 5 seconds did at the time, but still a fair bit more expensive than the budget smartphone options available. Apple's attempt at a budget phone was retired in most of the world in 2015. iPhone 6. After the Apple decided to release two new phone sizes in 2014 with the launch of the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. The Plus's screen was nearly an inch larger than the regular-sized iPhones, but both phones were nearly identical on the inside. The only major differences were that the Plus had optical image stabilization on its rear-facing camera, and apps could be displayed in landscape on the larger device. Both phones were the first to feature Apple Pay. Some even considered it the pocket computer of their dreams. iPhone 6S. Similar trend over the 6 was the inclusion of 3D Touch, a new technology that allowed users to press hard on the screen to bring up menus or interact with a program differently than they would just by touching the screen. The 6S was also the first phone to come in rose gold, a color that has since taken over the world. iPhone SE. Apple's second iPhone SE revived the design of the 5S, jammed in the innards of the iPhone 6S, and put it in an aluminum package. It's still the smallest phone that Apple currently sells, with a screen closer to 4 inches, rather than the 4.7-inch and 5.5-inch screens in the 6S and 6S Plus. iPhone 7, criticized as 6 and 6S, The iPhone 7 and 7 Plus have very similar designs and functionality to their predecessors, with a few notable changes. They're the first iPhones to have no headphone jacks, the first without physical home buttons, and the first waterproof iPhones. The 7 Plus also features two rear cameras that work in tandem to perceive depth and produce quite nifty portrait photos. iPhone 8. The iPhone 8 enable wireless charging, faster A11 processors, upgraded cameras, and True Tone displays. The iPhone 8 and iPhone 8 Plus mix a little bit of the iPhone X with a little bit of the previous generation iPhone 7 and iPhone 7 Plus. The overall design is the same as the design of the previous generation devices, but the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 8 Plus adopt new glass bodies sandwiched in a matching aluminum frame. Unlike the iPhone X, there continues to be a Touch ID home button and thick bezels at the top and bottom of the display. iPhone 10, iPhone X into Apple, but stocks look scarce. You'll also need to brace yourself for the iPhone X price that Apple announced at its September 12 launch event, as it easily costs more than any iPhone before it and is shipping later than expected. The iPhone X, or iPhone 10 as it's pronounced, is the first drastic new design we've seen on an iPhone since the iPhone 6, a phone released back in 2015. And it comes with a host of new features and flourishes we've never seen before from Apple. We have seen them from other smartphone manufacturers, though.